Now, here's the thing with this, you guys. The reason why I'm using this file, so what this selection is about, we're going to start talking about channels. If you look here, this would be pretty insane to try and select using ways we've used before. Does that make sense? Yeah? Like, even though this is, I think this is a high-res file. Well, let's see. Image size. Yeah, it's 300. So it's still got its limits how far in I can get. Okay? So what we're going to try and do here is separate this from the sky and replace the sky, okay? Now, here's your channels palette, which lives under Windows like all your palettes. So I'm going to pull it off of here. And what this does is it stores your color information, okay? You can dig into that if you want to, but it's if you notice it, in this case we're in CMYK or RGB, so it's got your red channel, your green channel, and your blue channel. If we opened up a new one, let's try this. Let's create a new document. And I'm going to go image mode CMYK. And now it has 4 channels. You guys see that? So it's got your cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay? Those are your 4 printing plates. Okay? That doesn't matter for the sake of what we're doing though. We're working RGB because that's screen. Now, here's another thing. If I make... We've talked about saving selections. Let's just go back over to another window again. We've talked about saving selections before. So if I make a selection and I go, I want to save that, and I go select, save selection. You see what it does right here? It makes what's called an alpha channel, and it stores that. That's where it stores it. Okay, so every time you make a selection, it's storing it in the channels palette. Okay? And then if I, so normally you have to go up here and go filter, or I'm sorry, select, load selection, and then drop down to whatever it is. This is only one in here, so I'm going to say this one. And go OK, and it'll do it. But again, that thing we've done before where we control click the thumbnail will work here too. Okay, so if you have a channels palette open, if you're noticing in paths, I can control click the palette to activate my path into a selection. In channels, I can use it to activate the selection. If I click on the thumbnail, control click on the thumbnail. And also, if I have a shape already, like if I have this shape already, you know, like when you had your camera selected or something. So I have an object here, it's not selected. In layers, I can go here and do the same thing. Control click and it'll activate that object. So sometimes I can use that to go, well, maybe I want to do, like I do this with spheres a lot, but I'm going to go option, and you get that double, or not option, alt. You get that double arrow, I pull it up here. And then I could go select or control click, turn this off, come here, and use that to knock out that shape. Right? So I'm just using that shape. All I'm saying is I can duplicate it, reactivate it just by clicking the thumbnail, control clicking the thumbnail, and then I could delete it. I use it a lot. I know it sounds weird, but I use it a lot for stuff. Okay? Just, you know, simple things. But what I'm saying is if you already have a shape on a layer, you can use it for a lot of things. Like we've showed it before where we can go, I could take this, if this was a person, and I could go, I can make a copy. Oops, I threw it out. And I could go edit, transform, distort. There it is. You know, and I could throw it out here like a shadow. You know what I mean? So I can use a lot of these things to reselect things. So then I get a shadow.
Are you recording?
Yeah. Does that make sense? It's just a little, you know. Okay, so this thing, we're going to use these channels to select this out. Okay? So I'm going to go, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to find the one with, I'm going to find the channel with the maximum contrast because I need that to get started. Does that make sense? So there's red. And when I click on one of these channels, it just gives me the red channel. And I think if I remember right, where the most white is where the most red is in the channel. I don't know if that really matters, but that's what it's doing. There's green. And there's blue, and that's clearly got the most contrast. Everybody can see that, right? So what I'm going to do, and again, I think you guys hopefully are starting to see that there's similarities between palettes. And also remember, you always have a fly out here. On all these palettes, there's a fly out here that does other things, okay? But this one, I'm going to duplicate it because if I worked on any of these layers or any of these channels right here, it would screw up my color. Okay, I could rename it if I want, but I'm just going to leave it blue copy. And then what I'm going to do here is try and get these two things to start to separate. Okay, so I'm going to go first to levels. And I think I'm going to go to the dark first. So I'm going to go all the way over here to my dark because we got dark, medium, and high right there. So I'm going to pull this dark in and see if I can get this part to darken up a little bit. And then, now the trick here, there's a couple of things. Well, let's do this. Let's just stay here for now. And then I'm going to go over here to my light and try and get rid of as much of that light as I can. I'm going to zoom in here. What I want to make sure is I'm not losing information in these trees. What will happen is if I go too far, it'll start to eat into the edges and it'll start to give me like funky edges, which I don't want. So I'm going to go back over here. This is the only spot on here that's really got more gray. And watch, if I pull it over, see how I start to eat the edges of that tree? I can't do that, right? I got to make sure that I keep, and I'm only going to be able to go so far with this. I'm going to go, okay, let's zoom out. It's not terrible. I'm going to zero these out to my white and black or whatever. Only I want black in front for now. And I'm going to go, I'm going to select a brush. And I'm going to put this brush on overlay, and you'll see why here in a second. And I just want to get a regular brush. I don't want to have a funky, weird brush. So I'm going to get a hard round. I don't want a soft round for this. And I'm going to put my palette over here. And there it is. So I've got black on overlay, okay? And what you'll see is what'll kind of happen here. Is because it's on overlay, it doesn't really want to paint over the whites. So it makes it easier for me to knock all this into black and not have to worry too much about it. Does that make sense? So the overlay on black doesn't want to paint on white and vice versa. Hang on, let me turn this off. Okay. Now this in here I'm not too worried about. Now see, I don't want to lose any of those sky holes in my tree, so I got to be careful. And I got to make sure this is on 100% opacity, by the way. And I'm going to go in. Now what gets tricky, and I'm not going to worry too much about it for right now, is these little wispy trees right there. Because they're not going to want to paint black. And they are a little. It's really funky though. I'm going to leave them there just for the hell of it. What I'd probably do is I'd probably just take those out and pop them back in. Because they're just a pain in the ass to keep. Actually, I'm going to do that. I might be able to paint over them a little bit. They're just getting too ham-fisted. Went a little over. So back here it gets a little funky because it's like, well, that's not really, you know, that's kind of white. So, but I want that. So I got to go over it quite a few times. Some of this stuff, like you can notice here in the foreground, it didn't really cover all that. Okay. I'll fix that in a minute. All we're trying to do is make a black matte mask. That's what we're doing. Because this is a complex selection. And I'm probably going to be a little sloppy here because for the sake of time, I want you guys to be cleaner. Okay, that's not, let's get up in here. So now I'm going to come in here and try and do the same thing with the white. Actually, I'll do this first. Now I'm going to take this off of overlay and just put it on normal because then I can X this out. Because now it's on normal, I can get all this that I didn't get with this one. And I'm going to go in here a little bit too. And I just want to paint out what is on the landscape, okay? Does that all make sense, you guys? So now we got a pretty black finish. Now I'm going to go back to overlay and I'm going to flip this to white. You can just hit X, by the way, it'll flip it. Well, normally it does. It's not flipping it, I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. And do the same thing, because on white now, white doesn't want to paint onto the black on overlay. Let's see if we can get down here. And I got to be careful because it's not perfect. So I got to make sure that I'm being okay here. I'm going to open up some of that tree a little bit. Right in there. I'm going to zoom in here and make sure that I'm not knocking anything out that I need. This one I'm not going to worry about, these trees. I could put them back in, so I'm just not going to worry about it. It's an easier fix to just put them back in. I'm going to leave that. I don't know if that's good, but I'm going to leave it. And I could probably finesse my edges a lot more. I think they're a little funky, but that's okay. Now I'm going to flip back to black again. And go back to regular, because I'm seeing some stuff here I missed. And I think for the sake of this, this will probably be okay. Let's zoom out here. I think that's okay. So now I'm going to go back to my channels. And I'm going to control click the thumbnail. And it made a selection, okay? So I'm going to go back. I always forget which way it should go. I'm going to go back to here. And I'm just going to go right here to layer mask and click layer mask. Wrong way. So I got to invert it, select. So you don't want to select the sky, which is what you think you would want it to do. And I'm going to go inverse, and then I'm going to go layer mask. And now I'm going to do my usual thing where I go and grab a mid-value gray, fill this layer underneath it, and see if I'm okay. Oops, how did that happen? Hang on. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, see that? Because now I can come in here and do this, which is what we want to do. And I can swap out that sky or whatever I need to do. So now we've got a different environment. Does that make sense? Now, I could also do this. But now the lighting wouldn't be coherent, correct? So here's something really simple. Because what's going to happen when something's backlit? It's going to go into silhouette, right? So I'm just going to select this foreground. I'm going to go to Control L and bring up my levels. And I'm just going to go and see how it dials it in now. It feels much more sunsetty, late afternoon. Did you see that, Athena? Okay. But here's the thing that people do. They do this, and they go, okay, cool, now it's sunset. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, right? You got a nice, clean selection, but the lighting doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So when you're doing anything, like, I always do this when we're doing house stuff, right? I go, let me photo render it so we can see if we like it, right? And we just did this with, I've done it with a bunch of stuff, but we just did it with the fireplace. We just redid the fireplace. So we had a very modern looking thing, and then we had a couple different options, right? So I just photoshopped all of them. But I'm thinking about the lighting with each one, because I'm basically getting those tiles or whatever we're using, I'm getting them from offline. So hopefully they're just flat, basic light, shapes, right? Well, when I put them in the room, I still want them, even though it's just to kind of look at it, I still want the lighting to be correct. So I make sure the light, and then I also dial the temperature in and go, well, the room is kind of warm because there's some warm lighting here, and I'll just throw a little bit of warmth on it. Because, I mean, that's not for a client, it's for my girlfriend. I'm just going, which one do you like? But I still want I want her to see it apples to apples. Does that make sense? Or whatever I'm doing, okay? It's a really quick way. By the way, in that case, the one we thought we really liked didn't work at all, which was good to know, because we could have invested all that, brought the guy over to do it, and then we would have went like, I hate this, which would have sucked. So all I did here was I just dialed down. I used the mid-tone, and it just sort of picked up that warmth, and it feels like it's reflecting the sky a little bit. And I didn't even do anything color-wise. Does that make sense? I mean, I might have to come in here and go, I don't think I do on this, but, you know, I could saturate it a little more if I wanted to. I could desaturate it a little more, just make it really subtle. Could darken it here. I'd probably do that with levels. And then I'd say, okay, and that looks fine. Does that make sense? That's what we're doing.